Hello, my name is Carrie Brown and I'm with the Central Mississippi Regional Library System. Today I'm going to be reading to you chapters 10, 11, and 12 of A to Z Mysteries, The Deadly Dungeon, written by Ron Roy, illustrated by John Stephen Gurney, published by Random House, New York. Chapter 10. Where? Ruth Rose asked. We can go back to the cave and swim out through the tunnel, Dink explained. But there are bats in there. It's our only way out, Josh said. The kids lugged the two cages back through the tunnel. The parrots screeched and beat their wings. In the cave, the water was almost up to their knees and rising. We better get out of here fast, Josh said. Ruth Rose peered into the other tunnel. I wonder how far it is to the beach, she said. It can't be that far, Dink said. We're probably right under the castle. How are we going to swim and carry these cages at the same time? Josh asked. He glanced around the dark cave. We need a raft or something. If the water's not too deep, we can walk out, Dink said. He handed his cage to Ruth Rose, then stepped into the deeper water. It came up to his waist. It's kind of cold, he said, shivering, but it's not very deep. We can carry the cages out. But what if it gets deeper? Josh asked. We can't carry the cages on our heads. I have an idea, Ruth Rose said. I read it in a Girl Scout magazine. It showed how to use your jeans as floats. You can make water wings by tying knots in the ankles and legs. You mean get undressed? Josh said. No way. That's a great idea, Dink said. He climbed back out of the deep water, then kicked out of his sneakers and wet jeans. He tied knots in his jeans and put his sneakers back on. Dink looked at Josh. Come on, he said. The water's getting deeper. Okay, but I feel weird, Josh muttered, pulling off his sneakers and jeans. The water reached just below his boxer shorts. Dink tied knots in Josh's jeans, then dropped both pairs into the water. The air-filled jeans floated. Ready? Dink said. They stepped into the water and balanced the two cages on top of the floating jeans. It works, said Ruth Rose. This water's cold and yucky, Josh said. At least we can touch bottom, Dink said. Okay, let's go. The tunnel grew darker as they waded away from the cave. The water reached their chests but got no higher. The parrots were quiet, as if they knew they were being rescued. Do you think there are sharks in here? Josh said. His voice echoed. No, Dink said. Just a few man-eating lobsters. Suddenly they heard a whispery sound in the darkness around them. What's that? Ruth Rose asked. Calm down, Josh said, giggling. It's just the bats. We must have scared them. Are they friendly? Asked Ruth Rose. Not if you're an insect, Josh said. Finally they saw daylight. Ahead was the ocean end of the tunnel. We did it, guys, Dink said. They dragged the cages and soggy jeans to the beach near where they had eaten their picnic. Boy, does the sun feel good, Josh said, flopping down on the sand. The kids rested and caught their breath. Dink and Josh took the knots out of their jeans and spread them out to dry. I was thinking about these parrots, Josh said. I have a book about endangered birds, and I think these guys are in it. Why would anyone hide endangered parrots in a cave? Ruth Rose asked. Poachers, Josh said, pulling off his soaked sneakers. Poachers catch rare animals and sell them for a lot of money. But who? Josh shrugged. Someone who knows about the tunnel. I think I know who it is, Dink said. Josh and Ruth Rose looked at him. Who? Josh asked. Dink looked sad. Walker Wallace. Chapter 11. What? Ruth Rose yelled. That's crazy. Dink shrugged. I found one of the feathers in his Jeep and another on his boat. Josh nodded slowly. And when we had our picnic here yesterday, Wallace said Walker had been in the cave. Maybe he found the trap door in the playhouse. The footprints on the rug were big enough to be his, Dink said. Ruth Rose stood up and wiped sand off her wet jeans. I don't believe you guys. Walker wouldn't break the law, and he sure wouldn't use his sister's house. I hope not, Dink said. Anyway, let's get the parrots up to the castle. Dink and Josh tugged on their damp jeans and grabbed the cages. A few minutes later, they burst into Wallace's kitchen. She was writing at the table. "We found out what's making those noises," Dink blurted out. The kids told Wallace about the tunnel to the cave and the parrots. "A trap door in the playhouse?" Wallace exclaimed with wide eyes. "And a tunnel? How incredible!" "It's like a secret passageway," Josh said. "Maybe pirates hid gold down there." "Well, I don't know about pirates," Wallace said, "but now I know how Emery Scott got all that marble and stuff up here." "What should we do with the parrots?" asked Ruth Rose. "Show me," Wallace said. They all trooped into the mudroom. When the door opened, the parrots began flapping around in their cages. Their shrieks filled the room. "Poor things," Wallace said. "Should we feed them? What do parrots eat?" "Got any fruit?" Josh said. "That's what they'd eat in the rainforest." Wallace went to the kitchen. "I wonder where these guys came from," said Ruth Rose. Josh studied the parrots. "Probably Africa or South America," he said. "How would the poachers get them all the way to Maine?" Dink asked. "By boat," Josh said. "Then a smaller boat would bring them into the cave. A boat like Dink stopped talking as Wallace came back with 2 peeled bananas and a bunch of grapes. They dropped the fruit into the cages. The parrots grabbed the food in their beaks. "They were starving," Wallace said. She placed a bowl of water in each cage. "I'm kind of hungry too," Josh said. "We missed lunch." "Well, we can't have that," Wallace said. "Come into the kitchen." While she made sandwiches, Dink explained about the light he'd seen in the woods the night before. "I bet there were more cages. They must take them out through the playhouse at night." "We should hide down there and see who it is," Ruth Rose said. Wallace shook her head. "Absolutely not. Those people could be dangerous." She brought out plates and napkins. "Today is Sunday, but tomorrow morning I'm going to call the state capitol. They must have someone who deals with poachers." Wallace looked at the kids. "Promise me you'll stay out of that tunnel and cave." Dink kicked Ruth Rose and Josh under the table. "We promise," he said. After lunch, the kids went back to the playhouse. They cleaned the dishes and swept the rug. "I wish we could get those poacher guys," Dink said. "I think we should sleep in the playhouse," Josh said. "Then, if anyone comes, we'll grab them." "Josh, they'd grab us and stick us in a cage," Ruth Rose said. "Besides, Wallace would never let us stay down here," Dink said. "But I have another idea." At 1:30 in the morning, the kids were crouched by the window in Dink and Josh's dark room. They were fully dressed. Josh yawned. "Maybe no one is coming tonight." "Maybe they know we found the cages," Dink said. "Walker could have seen us from his boat." "I still don't think it's Walker," Ruth Rose said. "But whoever it is will have to come feed the parrots, right?" "Right," Dink said. "Let's take turns watching. I'll go first. You guys can snooze." "Wake me up if you see any bad guys," Josh said, flopping on his bed. "Well, I'm not tired," Ruth Rose said. "I hope they go to jail for 100 years. She and Dink stared out into the darkness. The alarm clock counted away the minutes. Josh began snoring. "Look," Ruth Rose whispered a while later. "A firefly." Dink saw a light moving slowly through the darkness. "Wake Josh," he told her. "That's no lightning bug." The kids tiptoed past Wallace's room, then hurried down the steps and out through the mudroom door. Creeping silently, they approached the playhouse. Moonlight fell on the clearing. A few yards from the playhouse, a dark car stood in the shadows. Dink grabbed Josh and Ruth Rose and pointed. "It was Walker's Jeep!" "I guess you were right," Ruth Rose whispered sadly. The kids inched forward. Suddenly Dink saw a light coming from the playhouse. A man was bent over pulling open the trap door. A glowing flashlight lay on the floor next to his feet. The man stood up. In the flashlight's beam, Dink recognized who it was. Ruth Rose grabbed his arm. "Ripley Pierce!" she whispered. A moment later, Rip disappeared down the steps into the tunnel. Suddenly, Josh bolted around the corner of the playhouse and through the open door. Before Dink could say anything, Josh slammed the trap door shut. Dink heard the spring lock snap into place. Chapter 12. "What's Operation Game Thief?" Dink asked the next day. It's an 800 number you can call in Maine to report poachers, Wallace explained. She brought more hot pancakes to the table. No one had gotten much sleep. After locking the trap door, Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose had run back to wake up Wallace. She called 911 and reported poachers on her property. The police had come and arrested Rip. The officers gave Wallace the Operation Game Thief phone number. Wallace had then driven Walker's Jeep to his house and brought him back to the castle. The Maine Fish and Game Department will have plenty of questions for Rip, Walker said. Trading in endangered animals is a federal crime. How did Rip get the parrots? Josh asked. He must have contacts in the countries where they were captured, Walker said. The police will be checking his phone bills to see whom he called. He probably used his own lobster boat, Wallace said, shaking her head. No wonder it always looks so clean. Why did he have your Jeep? Josh asked. Walker speared another pancake. Rip's car conked out a few days ago, so I let him borrow mine. It was a perfect setup, Wallace said. Rip needed money, and he had contacts who would pay for a lot of rare parrots. I wonder if he sold any other animals, Josh said, like monkeys or snakes. We may find out yet, Walker said. He winked at Josh. What made you shut the trap door on Rip? I got mad, Josh said. I wanted him to see how it felt to be in a cage. So that green feather on Josh's sneaker came from Rip, right? Dink asked. Walker nodded. He probably brought it into the Jeep on his foot, and the one you found on my boat got there the same way. Josh blushed. For a while we thought you were the poacher, he told Walker. Well, I never did, Ruth Rose said. Walker grinned at Ruth Rose. Thanks. What made you so sure? You're too busy, she answered. And you wouldn't be mean to parrots. You threw those little crabs back into the water yesterday. What will happen to the parrots? Dink asked. I assume they'll go back to where they came from, Walker said. And Rip will most likely go to jail. And thanks to you kids, I won't have to hear any more strange noises, Wallace said. She grinned shyly. But to tell the truth, I think I'll miss the ghost of Emery Scott. I kind of liked living in a haunted castle. Just then a loud screech came from the mudroom. The end. Thank you. Goodbye.